All right, you maggots, listen up. All right, I'm wrapping it up on the BBSing stories. The protocol I was using towards the end was bimodem, and that's the one that let you upload and download at the same time. Um, Z modem was very popular. It came in packages, but a lot of the times, if you didn't buy a registered or get it registered, it would only let you download, which made life miserable for us sysops because then when you're trying to teach someone how to upload, you realize they have a copy of Z modem, uh, which won't upload because they didn't register. Now, Z modem had a weird type of error correction, and it rarely messed up. It knew enough. It did a CRC check, but in other words, as you're downloading with Z modem, if it made a mistake, it would back up on the zip file. You see it back up, and then it would go forward, and that would be it. You had the zip file. When you unzip the file, it was good. So I went into the bimodem, and I'd be on Saltair bulletin board. Saltair was Clark Company PC board, and basically they just stole a lot of stuff from people and just put it in their package, and they didn't care. And they got reviewed so many times as being a great company. They weren't a great company. At the end, they switched the name to Genesis. That was the new version, and they were getting ready to dump the people that had PC board. And some people figured that out, and they were making complaints. And then they were trying to make the package do both internet hub. It would be an internet hub and a bulletin board system. I don't know if they ever did it. I bailed. I was like, you know what? The writing's on the wall in real big letters. I told you after I quit, I found many messages from people. He just walked away from us. After, yeah, I taught this one guy how to do quick packets and everything, and he bailed on me. And then he had the nerve to make up a story that I bailed on him. But anyway, it fell apart for a lot of people. And there were people that just kept the bulletin boards going, even though they weren't getting any calls. And one of them was Nutley BBS. It just sat there, and I would go over there, and you could get the guys that wrote shareware were still uploading new versions of their program. So I go over to Nutley BBS, and I met the sysop over at the Electronic Barn, and he says, "Yeah," he says, I just keep it going, just out of habit." And you're talking $35 or more just in the phone call. If that's just for the line. That's not if it dials out and gets mail. But it was an experience, and you every day as a sysop you would take shareware files apart, PK unzip them, and that was the thing I had registered also. I had a registered version of PK unzip. You unzip the file and you try the program out, and a lot of programs would come up and it would say this program isn't finished yet, and you're like, this is a great idea. They wouldn't finish it. There were a lot of programs, shareware, that weren't fully functional. You had to contact the author, and then for 20 bucks, he would give you a key, and it would turn a. Most of the time, I'd contact the author. He had pulled this phone number. That was it. A program that you thought was pretty good. But the program I just mentioned to a guy, Stubendas, I don't know what the hell that thing was. And the one sysop, just to be funny, he kept uploading the latest version to my bulletin board every week. And then I'd call him up and we'd just laugh because I used to call it Stupid DOS. It was a utility to move files around, but it was so complicated and it had so many features that you didn't need. And I think it was a German company that made it. Stupid DOS, Stubendas. But there were programs on there. One time I was watching television, and before Doom and Quake, I hope you guys at least heard about those two games. It was called Spear of Destiny, and you could also get Rescue Rover. And these games were like really good, but it only went so far, so many levels, unless you registered it. And I'm watching television, and they got a school system, and they got this woman teacher, and she's telling how her students are programming and all this stuff. I'm like, really? I'm like, program's really hard. And in the background, the kids are all playing Spear of Destiny. I can't say what it is. Look it up. Spear of Destiny. This video, if I say certain buzzwords, it can get knocked down. But yeah, they were playing this run through the maze, shoot people up type game. And the teacher's standing there, and she's telling about how these children learn the program. And meanwhile, in the background, you see they're playing Spear of Destiny. And the news reporter didn't know what he was doing either. And when I was running the bulletin board, one of my neighbors was writing for the local paper. And I said, I got a bulletin board in town. He didn't know what that was. And I explained it to him. He goes, well, if you write up a paragraph, I'll go over it and I'll publish it. And I'm like, you're supposed to take the information from me and write it up. I'll take you and show you it. He didn't want to do it. That's the kind of town I lived in. So anyway, after a while, it was just all work. And I could see PC Board or Salt Air or Clark Development Company was getting ready to bail. And I told you, one of the things they did is I had all these door games that were free hooked to the bulletin board. And people were playing these games. And all of a sudden, one day, they decided to redo the door system so it would only work with what they wanted it to work with. And they killed all those doors. And they didn't care. It was like, it'll work with the mail sorter door. Thank God it worked with Sparky's mail sorter, the quick packets. Yeah, and that was, what did I say that was in one letter? Q mail. And he was nice enough to give me the trick to make this other mail package sorter work. That was his original one. And it had to say, life is better with Q mail or something like that. You had to put that in with quotes. And the program would start working. And I was able to use that. But then as I went and started having multiple bulletin boards that I uploaded mail to, Magnet, I needed a better sorter. But it was something, all the software I had to learn. And then every few days, somebody would change their software. And it would stop working. And you'd go get mail from one guy, and all of a sudden, it would have extra bits that you didn't need, but it was for the future that never happened. And the mail wouldn't come down, and then you have to work with it with his bulletin board, because I had PC board and they had other ones, and they had a quick packet door, and that was the other thing. Their quick packet door might not be updated as fast as the quick packet door for PC board. So you're trying to run a mail system, and you constantly have these really hard problems, and then you call up the programmers, and you actually talk to them, and they're tired, man. These guys stay up late at night, smoking, drinking, doing drugs, and you get a hold of them, and they tell me how they can't sleep right and all this stuff, and they're into it. And I would point them in the direction that I thought the problem was at, and they would email me back or mail me back, and say, yeah, that was it, I found it, and then that would be done. And then I'd go through my bulletin board and make sure everything worked, and I'd walk away from it. And then I'd go somewhere else and find something that, it'd be nice adding this onto it. And then you start to dance again, trying to get it all to work together. And the one guy I used to talk to all the time, he had a program that split DOS in 2 to 4 separate entities like Windows. And he had 2 modems. And he had two lines, and he didn't use Windows. He used this, whatever it was. And he kept saying to me, I should switch to that. And I'm like, well, it sounds like a lot of work. And it was expensive. And at the time, I had quit working. I was using my savings. And it wasn't cheap. You buy a new modem every 3 months or whatever it is. And then, you got the electric bill. You're updating your computer. Things burn out. Oh, man, it was crazy stuff. I would get these glitches in the power line, and I never had them before. Well, what I was doing was down in the cellar, the power plug for the computer had a fluorescent light on. And then as soon as I turned that fluorescent light off, I would get all these glitches. So then I realized there was AC power glitches coming in and locking my computers up. But by leaving the light on, that was squelching them. So I bought a Transorb, whatever, for the line, and that fixed it. But there's certain days you're sitting there and you have a problem, and it just started, and then you realize, what did I just update? And then you track it down to the program, and then you call the guy up and you work with him. And at first, if you're one of the first to contact him, he doesn't want to believe it. But then as more and more people get the time, and then he believes it, he goes in and he realizes what he did wrong. But the whole thing was half-assed. But it was fun if you dialing up these places like Arc Exchange and the Dean's List and the Golden Dane. And there was the other guy. He was heavy into Rush Limbaugh, and his was the EIB net or whatever. And I taught him how to do log off testing. He was an okay guy. He was a real heavy conservative, and he was older. So when you're on the phone with him, he would take notes, and you had to go step by step, telling him how to fix the problem. And then his friend was Max, who was the Golden Dane. He would sometimes help him. But there were people that were in their 60s that got into computers, and they really were into it. And then you had the guys who were in their 60s that couldn't not do something. Like this one guy, Tony, even though I put a hard drive in his computer, all he had to do was turn it on and come up and see. And then he'd say DIR and call up his programs. He insisted on reinstalling DOS every single time. And I went over to his house, and I'm standing there, and he had to install DOS over the hard drive again. And I said to him, you got something wrong with you. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, I called up C directory and DIR, still wouldn't help. He says, but it was because he owned a Commodore 64. And every time he turned that on, he had to load DOS or whatever it was, the operating system. So in his mind, whenever he put his DOS computer on, he had to reinstall DOS. And he'd put the thing away in the closet. Then he'd bring it down and reinstall DOS, put the program in, dial my bulletin board, go on a page with zip files, and just sit there and read the descriptions for like a half hour. I thought it was locked up. And I call him up, and I finally realized he was going Alzheimer's. I dread if I ever get that. Today I had another incident. I dread if I get Alzheimer's. But in other words, you have all these people, different ages, and then as it went on, the group of people that were calling got younger, much younger, and nastier. And I changed my bulletin board where they had to leave a questionnaire, a real simple questionnaire, your name and your phone number. And it said, I'm going to call you up and verify your age. And they wouldn't do it. They dropped carrier. And then, of course, I had to call the ID number. And then when you call people up, they're like, well, my computer really isn't working right now. Can you help me out? Oh, my God. There were so many people that would do something stupid to the computer. And then they would take it to the computer store. And he'd give them an estimate. They didn't like it. They'd take it all back home. And there were people that at work, they would actually get an older computer that was pretty good. And they would turn it on, and they didn't understand it. It's too much of a learning curve. This one guy I met, he bought a $2,000 computer. He overpaid. And I kept saying, how are you making out? I got a guy coming over that's going to show me. I got a guy coming over. Guy never came over. And after about 6 months, he wanted to sell the overpriced computer to me for what he paid for it. I said, dude, it's an off-name brand. I said, I don't want to even get involved. Why not? I said, I don't want it. I don't need another computer. I build my own computers up. Well, could you buy it from me and then no. He goes, I should have never bought it. Yeah, that's right. But he overpaid for it. And he never got into it. And he bought it because he thought he was going to email this girl. And then he realized she wasn't online anymore. And that's the other thing. People that were online on AOL, they would go online on AOL and send emails, but they didn't realize you had to go off to the internet. And I tried to explain that to one person. She couldn't see my bulletin board. I had a business online. She just, I don't see your business. I said, you're not leaving AOL, are you? And she's just staring at me. I said, you have to leave AOL. In there's a button you click, and you leave and go to the internet. It takes about a minute for the whole, it was a nightmare. Well, anyway, people didn't realize that when they were on AOL, they really weren't on the internet. And then later on, it was all part of the internet. But when it first started out, and there was, I keep saying CompUSA, CompuAd. There was one that had a CompuServe. There were companies that had magazines and a server, and you could go up there and get utilities from them. And if you subscribe to the magazine, you would know that place is there. There was a lot of really cool stuff in the very beginning, and it's DOS. You gotta install the program in a directory. You have to CD / into the directory, and then you say the executable name of the file, and the program would load. And then somewhere in the program, it'd have an exit. You get back out of the program. And then Windows come along. See, that's the things that kept happening. Windows came along, and then right after that, the internet. So bulletin boards were getting hammered. There were people that were having trouble getting their bulletin board to work on their Windows, and that took weeks. And then Windows would update, and then it wouldn't work again. And I was sitting there. I'm going to stay with DOS, and I stayed with DOS. I think did it go to 6.02, something like that. That seems to be a number in my head. I was running 4.02 or whatever, and then I think the last version was 6 something. But man, that DOS, it ran good. Once you got the bugs out of that, and there was the problem with the bulletin boards was it was just work all the time. And then late at night, these sysops would call me, and I wasn't working, so I could stay up late. And they'd call me really late at night, and they're like, "Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that?" And then you hang the phone up, and the phone would ring again. It was, "Man, you're on the phone a long time. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. Can you help me with this? I'm going out of my mind." And then you help the person. And a lot of times it's because they didn't register the program. The one guy called me up. He wanted a FidoNet key. And I'm like, you just can't join FidoNet. Well, why not? I said, you have to fill out an application. You're kidding. I said, no. I said, you can join a smaller. So I got him to join my bulletin board system. And it was quick packets. But he thought that you can get, everybody had illegal stuff, like an illegal key, and he could turn FidoNet sorter on. He could go on and join somebody. I didn't realize that FidoNet, you would apply to it, and they might get back to you. And that's why I started Magnet, was because there were a lot of people that wanted to do Echo Mail, and nobody respond to them. They would go look at your website, or not website, your bulletin board, and see how big it is, and how many people were on it. And if it wasn't busy, they knew not to get involved with you because you wouldn't follow up. See, these guys were pretty smart. So I would help them. And then once they got it working, they would apply to, say, Fido or something else. And then they would dump me. I'd go on their bulletin board wondering why they weren't taking the mail. And it's gone. My Echo Mail system's gone. And you can have more than one Echo Mail system. But see, once you get Fido, you're the hot lick. Okay, I got in Fido. Now you join Magnet to get into Fido. And that's why after a while I was doing, teaching 2 new people and losing 4 people. And I think the most I got up in systems in a week was 16. And there was about 70-something people that I taught. And I'm looking at these phone bills, and you're like, this isn't worth it. After a while you feel like you're a sucker. You are a sucker. And people are just using you. And I was always trying to be the nice guy, and I had guys come to my house with EEPROMs that wanted them erased, because I built an eraser with a UV light. They would come to my house, and then they had someone else that would burn an EEPROM for them. See, on your motherboard, you could update, on certain motherboards, you could update the EEPROM, and it would handle more hard drives, and you would get other features. Well, anyway, they would come to my house, and I'd take the EEPROM, put it in the eraser, and they'd come the next day and pick it up. And they had a friend that only had a programmer, and then he would program it, and then they put it in their motherboard. Now the motherboard would come up, and it would have more features on it. So the motherboard was basically, there was a 6-month window where the motherboard would come out, and then by the end of the 6 months, it had updates with software. Or actually, I think that's actually firmware. UART's a firmware, it's not software. It is software, but they call it firmware because it's you really can't change it. You have to unplug the chip and change it that way. But I spent so many hours, and you go to bed like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and you're laying there and your mind is buzzing, especially if you got a problem, you can't get something working. And it always turns out to be someone updated something. And after a while, you're like, do these people ever check this stuff? And then they always argue with you first, that it's on your end, not their end. And I'm like, I got 4 guys with the same problem. Oh, you do? Yeah. And then they look into it, or they would check their email or their mail. It wasn't email back then. They check their mail and find out there were other people contacting them and fix it. But I had that, like I said, overnight, PC board, I downloaded an update, and all of a sudden all my doors didn't work. I spent weeks installing all those doors and getting them working and putting new answers in them. And the one, I think it was the guy's name was Fast Fingers. There was a maze program, and I could not get it to work. And he was ready to be deployed, and he finally answered me back, and he told me, oh, he goes, you know what I really did, which was messed up? He says, I used a VGA monitor. See, I had a Hercules graphics monitor on my bulletin boards. That was an orange monitor, and they were cheap. And he says, you know, the way I wrote the software, you have to have a VGA card in the computer for the door to work. I go, you got to be kidding me. So I had an extra monitor, an extra VGA card. I installed it in my one computer, and the game started working. And it was so hard. You're in a maze, and there were 5 rooms or whatever. And this one guy I went to tech school with, he worked for the post office, and he was smart. And I watched him one day come into that maze, and within an hour he was through that maze. I could not do a maze, but it was a game that was almost like it was on your computer. It had graphics. I don't remember exactly how they did it, but in other words, when you're in the game, it's putting ANSI graphics on your screen, just like you're in the you loaded a game and you're on your own system. And that was the beginning of in the bulletin board systems. They started having this new kind of system where when you went to a bulletin board, visited it, it would download graphics files and put them in a directory. So the next time you went to that bulletin board, those pages would load faster. I forget the name of that. There were so many innovations, and I just kept saying, this is a good idea, but I ain't getting involved in this because I had so much going on. And the amount of emails from people that needed help. And what they do is they go email a bunch of people or mail a bunch of people. And then whoever responds first helps them. And then when you respond to them, they don't answer you because they've already got someone to help them. And that's the stuff you have to learn about people. They're kind of sneaky. But I can't think of anything else right now. That's about it. I had BiModem, Z-Modem. Z-Modem was really good. When you pulled the file down using Z-Modem, you knew it was going to be good. X-Modem, you know, you watched it do error correction, but it could still get a glitch in the software. And then you unzip the software and it don't work. Or it don't even unzip. It tells you there's an error. And the one program that everybody passed around was called tides.com. And you would put your location in based on the longitude and latitude. And it would tell you, I had a river across the street from my house, and it would tell me if the tide is going in and out. The river across from my house went to Newark Bay. And you want to know the high tide because if it rained a lot, the high tide would bring the river up and it would flood. And this one guy used to have me keep an eye on his business, and I'd call him up and say, it's coming up, and he'd have to come down and put the pumps in. But anyway, tides.com never worked. And then one day this sysop from this other bulletin board, he uploaded it to me, and I deleted it, and he saw that, and he called me up. I got talking to him. He goes, I'll upload it again. You unload it, unzip it. I unzipped it. It worked. And I was like, that's the first time that ever worked. And what he did was he could never get tides.com to work. And he went to the author and got a copy and then put it up on everybody's bulletin board. By that time, though, people were taking it down because what the hell was it? It was they thought it was virus and that. And then I did a program or a bunch of drawings how to do an antenna that would do satellite that comes over your head like a GOES 9, and it was called a zip zap antenna. And I contacted the guy that designed it, and I told him, I sent him the pictures. I said, I drew all this up. Is it okay if I post it as a file? I mentioned you in it. He says, yeah. I put that up in different places. The virus protection saw Zip Zap as a name, and that was a virus at the time. And it would take my drawings down. What a nightmare. The whole thing it was fun for 3 years, sort of. But it just fed my brain. You know, I could take as much as I wanted. And when you got everything working, you would then sit there and go, what do I want to add next? And it was you would have to print out the documents with dot matrix printer and sit there and read the instructions. And it was really hard. And a lot of people that set up a bulletin board, would just put like a host program up. I had eHost before PC board, and I begged the guy that wrote eHost to just change 2 letters in the program, your files and your program descriptions. And he wouldn't do it. He says it's a host program. I said it's a bulletin board program. If you just change 2 letters, and he wouldn't do it for me. So I switched to PC board, and I didn't re-up with him. But it's amazing stuff. You're sitting there and spend hours trying to figure out what did somebody do to you. And then, like I said, the maze program, that had me for several days. And I'm thinking, maybe it just doesn't work. And then I saw the guy's name. I tracked him down, and he was being deployed, Middle East or whatever it was. And he said to me, oh, he goes, I just remembered. He goes, you got to have a VGA monitor card in the computer for the program to work. He said he was going to, after he got it working, he was going to switch it to like a Hercules graphics. And he never did. So once I put the card in, it all worked. And only the one person went in that and solved it. I couldn't solve it. And most other people would start going through the maze and they'd get lost. And on my monitor down in the cellar, I could see where the person was in the maze. It was slick. Some of the stuff that was coming along, like I said, Rescue Rover was a really good game. Oh. What was it? Was it Gremlins? No. The Lemmings. There was a program called Lemmings. And go look Lemmings up. That's some of these programs were the type you'd almost pay money for. But Lemmings at first, when it came out, like Tetris, it was sort of free and you didn't have to buy it. But Lemmings is complicated. And a lot of secretaries played Lemmings. Go look up Lemmings. I think that's it. All right, that's it.